Okay, so when it comes to the causes of inflation, we essentially distinguish two kinds of inflation. One is called cost-push inflation, and an example of that would be like the oil price crisis of 1973 or 1979. Specifically, the 1970s were famous for the inflation, but it was triggered. So whenever the inflation starts on the supply side, so what happened in the 1970s, specifically in 73, there was a war between Israel and Egypt, and as a result of that war, the oil exporting countries, OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, they imposed a oil embargo on the West, and what happened is that the price for oil went through the roof. And then, of course, once oil gets more expensive, everything else gets expensive too, like wages and the production goods. And then, of course, the wages go up because once the workers can no longer anymore afford a regular, normal life without having to accept a lower real wage, of course they will ask for a higher wage, and that is known as the price-wage spiral. Cost-push inflation is definitely something that's real, and again, cost-push inflation starts on the supply side, but most episodes of inflation are known as demand-pull inflation. And demand-pull inflation is simply when the government essentially pays its debt by printing the money. So when the government has a lot of debt, it may not have enough tax revenues or other revenues in order to repay its principals on the bonds and interest. And then if it gets into if it basically asks the central bank to liquidate the debt directly, well, then the money supply is likely to increase at a very rapid rate, much faster than the production of goods and services. And then we have a lot of money that chases fewer goods, and that pushes up the prices. So demand-pull inflation, as the name suggests, starts on the demand side, and what that means is that essentially the government pays for its public expenditures by essentially printing money. So they issue bonds, but the bonds are not being purchased by the public, but by the central bank, and the central bank just issues money, and that then creates inflation. So in the next video we'll look a little bit closer at a formal representation of inflation, which is something that is known as the equation of exchange, or the Cambridge equation.